Keanu Reeves has long since acquired a special status in the Hollywood environment, and it's not just about his abilities as an action or dramatic actor. He has a legendary reputation as an unusually kind, generous, and modest person who seems to go against all the stereotypes associated with fame and money. Many people think that everything is already known about him, from his difficult childhood and losses in his personal life to stories about helping random people on the street. But suddenly information surfaced that Keanu decided to reveal something that he had never even hinted at before. Fans could hardly believe it, because who would have thought that this quiet, reserved person was keeping such an important secret? As soon as the news of the impending confession leaked online, fan communities exploded. Everyone vied with each other to guess what secret had been revealed, why now, and what kind of shock it would entail for millions of people around the world. Rumors began to flare up a few days before the official event to which Keanu was invited. It was supposed to be a regular press conference dedicated to the launch of a new art house film, where Reeves acted as a producer and consultant on some technical issues. It would seem that nothing out of the ordinary, because he often helped independent directors, supporting original projects. However, behind the scenes at Hollywood studios, they were whispering that Keanu himself had prepared some kind of surprise, and not directly related to either cinema or his business activities. Moreover, those few insiders who managed to overhear snippets of the actor's conversation with his close friends claimed that he looked excited and at the same time somehow inspired, as if he had finally gathered the courage to talk about something very personal. Finally, the day of the press conference arrived. The event was held in a small, intimate room. It was filled with journalists, film critics, a few trusted associates of Reeves, and invited members of the public who had won access to the event through a competition. The stage was set up with a table and a few chairs for the panelists. It was business as usual at first. The host introduced the film, briefly described Keanu's contributions to the production, and mentioned that he was expected to make a brief appearance. The audience applauded politely, but many were clearly tense with anticipation. Everyone could hear voices chanting about some possible revelation. There seemed to be a mixture of curiosity and hesitation in the air, because if Keanu was about to reveal a secret, could it really be about his personal life, or would it be another myth? When Reeves himself took the stage, many noticed that his gaze was slightly distant. He said hello, thanked everyone for coming, promised that the film he was working on would please fans of unconventional art house cinema. Nothing out of the ordinary, a quiet, measured tone, a few humorous comments about the peculiarities of the filming process. But something in his movements indicated an inner tension. He crossed his fingers, mechanically touched the edges of the table, and at times seemed to be struggling to contain his excitement. Several journalists picked up on this alarm signal and began to look at him more closely, although no one wanted to publicly break the pre-established order of questions. 15 minutes of banal conversation about roles and the influence of acting on the process of preparing for new films passed. The guests were already beginning to think that perhaps the sensation was fake, but then the host suddenly said, "I will now hand over the floor to Mr. Reeves, who has something special to share with you." It was as if an electric shock passed through the room and everyone sat up straight in their chairs. Keanu took a deep breath, glanced at the sheets of paper in front of him, then put them aside, as if abandoning his prepared theses. There was a pause in the room. He looked up, and at that moment, many had the impression that he was really ready to say something intimate. The first thing he said made the journalists freeze. "Before I begin, I want to say that I have thought long and hard about whether to bring this topic up for public discussion. I am used to keeping personal things in the shadows, but maybe now is the time." His voice was even, but a slight tremor could be detected. Some cameramen, sensing that something important was about to happen, focused their cameras on the actor's face. The photographers dimmed their flashes for a moment, as if intuitively understanding that they needed to give him the opportunity to speak without pressure. The host remained silent, a allowing Keanu to continue. And he continued. The story turned out not to be about past tragedies that everyone knew about, or about some details of his personal life, where he usually prefers to remain silent, but about something that for him, perhaps, has an even deeper meaning. Keanu began to talk about how he had long been bothered by the question of why there is so little sincere attention to subtle human feelings in the world, why people cannot openly talk about their internal barriers and fears. He admitted that for a long time he himself behaved as if he did not need other people's participation, that he copes with problems alone, but at some point he realized that this was a false position. Some of the listeners looked at each other in bewilderment, not seeing a direct transition to the promised secret, but Reeves was focused. He added that his personal awareness came through many years of searching for answers in various practices and methods of self-knowledge. Here he smiled slightly, admitting that perhaps he sounded too abstract. "Why am I saying all this?" Keanu continued. "Because lately I've been doing something I've never advertised, visiting groups that help people who have experienced severe moral trauma, working with psychologists who use unusual techniques, and suddenly I realized that I have an ability for one thing that few people know about: the ability to capture other people's states and transmit a kind of energetic impulse of support. I can't explain it scientifically. I have no formal knowledge in the field of psychology, but I have experience. And this experience shows that sometimes my presence, my words, even my touch can act as a calming force or a slight healing." At these words, quiet whispers were heard in the hall. Some of the spectators looked puzzled, some enchanted. It sounded almost mystical. A famous person, beloved by everyone, suddenly says that he has some kind of therapeutic power. But he didn't sound like a charlatan or a self-proclaimed guru. He spoke sheepishly, cautiously, afraid of appearing ridiculous. The actor went on to say that he had actually experienced this strange feeling for a long time, when someone approaches him in a state of pain or anxiety, and he feels as if he can pull in some of the negativity, slightly easing their suffering. "For me, it's not magic," Keanu emphasized. "Perhaps it's just empathy at a level that's rare. For many years, I considered it a personality trait, didn't attach much importance to it. But after the losses that happened in my life, I noticed that I began to have a special connection with people who were experiencing grief themselves." This is how he described how he never intentionally tried to make advertising or a privilege out of it. But when faced with other people's problems, he saw that his support was more effective than one might expect from ordinary sympathy. Some colleagues whom he tried to help not with words, but with just his presence, later said that they felt renewed. At that moment, the audience literally went silent. No one expected that the king of restraint himself would make a public statement about some kind of almost paranormal empathy. But Keanu remained as honest as possible. "I don't want to seem special," he said. "I just understand that if it works, then why not share? Maybe we are all capable of this in some way. Maybe when we truly sincerely share another's pain, there is an exchange of energy, and some of the burden becomes easier." He said that he spent a whole year studying meditation techniques that help him feel better and those around him. At the same time, he emphasized, "This does not mean that I am turning into a mysterious healer. I am just an actor who has found a way to better understand people's emotions. This is my discovery, and I decided that if it helps someone, it would be unfair to continue to remain silent." It all sounded very unusual, but there was no arrogance or high-flown metaphors in his words. He was not claiming to cure illnesses or to have supernatural powers. Rather, he was describing a heightened sensitivity to the pain of others that many of us may have experienced on a lesser scale, but that was especially strong in him. Close friends of the actor who were present, including a prominent producer with whom he worked closely, confirmed, "Yes, I noticed it. When I was feeling bad, just talking to him gave me such a sense of peace, as if he was sharing something internally, without words." Suddenly, one of the journalists decided to ask a direct question. "Do you call this your main secret? Why now?" Keanu was embarrassed and then answered, "Because for a long time I didn't understand why people said they felt safer around me. I thought it was a polite compliment. but over time I noticed that too many people were repeating the same thing. And a couple of months ago, I was at a charity helping depressed teenagers, and one young man said to me, "It's like you took my pain away." It really touched me. I realized that if this is my uniqueness, I shouldn't hide it. Maybe I can be useful to someone, not only by entertaining them in the movies, but also on a human level. After these words, the audience again shivered. It sounded on the verge of mysticism, but from a person who was famous for his down-to-earthness and lack of a tendency to shock. And so it turned out that this is exactly why everyone took his story seriously. As Keanu spoke, some people burst into tears, others cringed, faced with a topic that was too unusual for a public event. Finally, the host asked if Reeves had ever thought about doing this professionally, that is, becoming some kind of consultant or officially helping people. To which the actor answered with a smile, "I don't think it can be formalized as a profession. I will continue to act, continue to communicate with fans, and if anyone feels that they need support, I will try to give as much as I can. But I am not a doctor or a healer. I am just a person who has learned to feel a little deeper. This is my secret, if you will, but there is nothing supernatural about it. It is just my truth." At the end of this frank monologue, the audience exploded with applause, and there was something more than just politeness in it. It seemed that people understood. A rare star decided not on a scandalous stunt for the sake of hype, but on a vulnerable confession, risking losing part of the audience that is not ready to believe such stories. After all, it is easy to imagine how skeptics will start to brand him an eccentric, inventing a legend about super empathy to attract attention. However, many, on the contrary, perceived this as a manifestation of colossal sincerity. Immediately after the event, people approached Keanu from different corners of the room. Some wanted to thank him, some asked cautious questions, and some asked for a minute of conversation, hoping to test this ability on themselves. He did not refuse anyone, although because of this he stayed longer than planned. The organizers did not interfere with such contact, although everything in their schedule was already going topsy-turvy, since the journalists still had many interviews to do. The video of his confession hit the web literally an hour after the end of the press conference. Bloggers edited short clips from fragments where Keanu talks about energy exchange and removing someone else's pain. This is how a real explosion in the media space began. Social networks were filled with heated debates. Some shouted that this was pure advertising for a new project. Others, that the actor, having gone through the horrors of personal tragedies, found his mission to help, and this is extremely noble. Still others laughed, believing that Reeves was under the influence of some dubious teachers. But those who have ever met him personally wrote in the comments, "He is a truly unusual person. Perhaps everything he says is true." People who have already become accustomed to stories about his kindness, giving up his seat on the subway, unexpected gifts to strangers, now received another argument. What if there is something in his warmth that borders on an invisible gift? Fans of the actor, who gather in the largest fan communities, held a vote, trying to understand how to treat such recognition. Several topics quickly gained hundreds of thousands of comments, where people shared emotions and their own experiences of communicating with Keanu, albeit briefly, but memorable. Someone recalled how just 30 seconds of conversation with him at one of the film festivals raised their spirits for weeks to come. Someone said that they saw him hug a crying fan, after which the fan left calmed down. Theories appeared that the actor had long wanted to move to open charity work related to emotional support for people, and now he simply decided to announce it. Be that as it may, all of Hollywood switched from the usual rumors about the next blockbusters to discussing the secret of Keanu Reeves for a while. Some stars who know him personally posted words of approval on their accounts, emphasizing that they know him as a person of rare depth. In the opposite camp, there were plenty of skeptics who said that there was no such thing as special empathy, that Keanu was just a nice guy and people were exaggerating. But even they admitted that such a statement sounded not like nonsense, but like a confession poured out from the heart. And it was this sincerity that confused many. At the same time, Keanu himself did not take any additional steps to promote this story. He continued to fulfill his schedule. He gave scheduled interviews, went to filming, and communicated with fans. When he was directly asked whether he regretted his confession, he shrugged his shoulders and answered briefly, "Since I said it, it means there was time. Let people decide for themselves whether to believe it or not." Several times they tried to catch him out, asking provocative questions like, "Heal me right now," or "Why didn't you help yourself when you were going through tragedies?" And then Keanu remained completely calm, only repeating that his ability is not a magic wand, but something that only works with sincere openness on both sides. Over time, the hype began to die down, but the aftertaste remained. Millions of people, inspired by this story, began to look more closely at those who are able to truly empathize with someone else's condition. Perhaps it seemed to someone that this biggest secret was nothing more than a metaphor expressing extraordinary kindness. But for others, especially for those who personally felt the warmth from Keanu, the event became confirmation. Behind all the noise and glitter of the industry, sometimes there is a magic of sincere empathy. The shock of fans was not that the actor went and declared himself a Superman, but that he, a figure who has long been a symbol of modesty and kindness, dared to open up a world of lonely pain, which, it turns out, he not only carries within himself, but also knows how to transform into something healing. No matter how his career develops in the future, this moment will go down in history as one of the most unexpected turns in the image of Keanu Reeves. He could have remained silent and kept his special empathy a secret, but he chose the path of vulnerability, revealing what he had long felt and was hesitant to put into words. Fans, of course, will continue to argue about the scale of his gift and its reality, but it is already clear that this news added another touch to the portrait of the actor as a person of depth, unlike other Hollywood kings of action. If this story inspired you, if you also believe that genuine empathy can change lives, let us know with a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions in the comments. Tell us what you think about Keanu's secret, and whether we are all capable of feeling mutual support if we are willing to truly open up to each other. Perhaps your comment or your personal experience will become the next important step for someone to accept and give a little warmth in this difficult world. In the meantime, let's thank Keanu Reeves for the courage to be himself, because it is this courage that gives us hope that behind the colorful tinsel of show business, there is a place for real feelings and genuine, living human participation.